We are just here for rhetorics. I led protests here for 23 days. I've been in DSS 3 times. My hotel was seized. If you go to Gwarimpa right now, there's a government agency there. So I understand the brutalization of our people. I live with this. I've been offered billions, literally, to go the other way, but I would not balk. There are people who are not buyable, not sellable, and some of them are here. And I like what the Honorable said. But for the will of the people, he will not be sitting here today. And that's why we're here. Are there APC people here today? Because I know invitations were given to them. Are there PDP people here today? Is ADC here represented? What about Accord? This is what we're talking about. I mean, the IG is represented right here. We have stakeholders. ABGA and all the political parties. Thank you. We have to get real, otherwise we're not going to make any change in our country. I've been here. I did primary school here. I was the head boy in my primary school. I was the head boy in secondary school. I'm an impeccable student. 20 years ago, I could have been anywhere in the world. But for what I call a cost, I'm cost because until Nigeria changes, we're not going anywhere. But in 5 minutes, I'll try to do this. Elections are not just about the ballot. Elections are about the soul of the country. It's the energy, it's the consciousness of the people. That's what elections are about. And as we move towards 2026, because that's the fulcrum for why we are here, we must ensure that we have justice. Because without justice, anarchy, violence will prevail. So for every political party here and those listening to me via the media, we must commit to the values that will allow us to have a free and fair election. And it begins from justice. Justice must be the fulcrum, it must be the foundation. Because without justice, you can't have peace. We must have justice. Justice is the baseline. And I commend the organizers because early education is still one. We must educate our people. We must raise the consciousness, the awareness of our people. We must get the people aware. And we must ensure that we build institutions. I like what the representation of the IG said here today. I'm happy that INEC is here. I'm happy that EFCC is here. I didn't even know that they monitor elections, but now we're going to put everything to test. We must build strong institutions, not strong men. Strong men is what has collapsed families. Strong men have collapsed our communities. Strong men have brought nations down. We must have security institutions that are firm and are unbiased. We need INEC that is impartial. INEC cannot be wearing jersey. You are not a player. You are an umpire. Civil society groups that must hold people and institutions accountable. The judiciary must completely be fearless. The judiciary is a woman and she's blind. It's only in Nigeria that she has one eye open. She must be blind to political parties, blind to religion, blind to tribe, blind to any social status or class. And we must engage, like many of my colleagues have said here. The communities have to take over, the people have to take over the process. Political leaders must show themselves as an example. There must be an example. No blood of anybody is worthy of any politician's ambition. Not a single one. But from our communities, to our mosques, to our churches, to our religious and tribal groups, to our cultural groups, we must ensure, we must wake up and hold the process accountable. And lastly, people, let me tell you something. Free and fair election is not a favor. Nobody is doing you a favor. It is democratic ideal and duty of everybody. This is the only legacy we have to leave for our children. This is the only legacy we have to leave for our people. And so today I challenge you, INEC. I challenge you, police. I challenge you, mothers and fathers. I challenge every young person here. This is the only country we have. A new Nigeria is possible, but it's an illusion until Abuja changes, until Amak changes, until we change our land. A new Amak is possible. Free and fair election is possible. And we must hold every institution, every individual, every family, including ourselves, accountable and responsible for this new Nigeria that we must birth.
And destroy nations. It is about ensuring that we have politicians who will become stakeholders and leaders to show and live and be example to the people, and also to ensure that the community take ownership of this process. That's the only time and only when we can have a peaceful elections, because again, peaceful election is not a favor. It is democratic responsibility and ideals that is required.
If you want to serve, you can actually do whatever you want to show that is exemplary within the period allowed. You can do it in 1 year. Just think of Ghana. Things are changed in 6 months. So you don't need to be there for eternity. And there's so many competent leaders in Africa. If the term is 2 years, serve 2 years and go. Another person will come and continue from. Once you show an exemplary life or direction, nobody can change it.
Thank you. Thank you, Worobi.
I know that the best is done when you are young, ideal, and vibrant and dynamic. When you are kuje, then you don't have the best. And but some people believe that unless they are there, nobody else.
When you took that decision on March 31st, 2015, it's written a little book, which you should read, My Transition Hours. But when you took that decision, it was one of those moments that it was between yourself, your conscience, your God, against the run of play. On the 31st of March 2015, even before the elections had concluded, when you made that call, you were answering what to me was more or less a divine call. And by taking that decision, not only did you reverse, and I think your successor made the point himself over and over. You had all the military, you had all the paraphernalia of power around you. It would have been possible to instigate a war. But by taking that decision, in my view, the people of Athens entrusted into your hands a torch of hope, a torch of what democracy should look like. The story of the United States of America is a lesson. After over 200 years, the behavior of Donald Trump and his supporters on June 6, 2022 suggests that time and experience very often are not reasons for us to go to sleep, because the human instinct for violence doesn't ever go to sleep. Therefore, we must remain vigilant over the claims that democracy makes. And the point, therefore, is that no matter how long democracy has been in our country, it is the strength of the institution that sustain the occasional assault to this foundation. Now, of course, if you live in a country like Nigeria, Ghana, and many African countries, a culture of cynicism has been embedded, because if you talk to Nigeria, people tell you, are we going to eat democracy? If you tell them it's going to take a long time, they say, how long is long enough? Yet, history suggests very clearly that democracy and its quest has no shortcuts. The challenge for those who govern is to ensure, I often use the metaphor of, I think women call it the pacifier. This little plastic rubber that women put in the mouth of a child. The child is sucking the rubber. There is nothing inside the rubber, but at least it enables the mother to continue cooking without disturbance. So in a way, African politicians must give us some plastic rubber to continue to manage, between now and the next election. Democracy's womb possesses many seeds, the good, the bad, and the ugly. It's not so much the quarrels that politicians engage in. In fact, many ordinary Nigerians, including myself, continue to encourage our people. Please, when you see these politicians fighting, even if they are throwing chairs among themselves in parliament, don't kill yourself, because they will still close the door and distribute the money of state among themselves. In that area, there is no fight. So very often, many of us jump into thinking that, these politicians don't like themselves. No, they like themselves. Even armed robbers have common interests. So let's measure our enthusiasm, because very often we think that democracy is about to fall because our people are always fighting. As a priest, I have experience of helping resolve problems of marriage. In the end, I've had family, women and men, come to me and say, look, our marriage is no longer working. We're 10 years now, 5 years now, we're sleeping in the same room, but we're not sleeping on the same bed. Or people will tell you all kinds of things, but families themselves have realized that marriage, the priesthood, every vocation is a work in progress. And there is not so much a question of the problems of the moment, but the development of the inherent capacity, which you can glean from friends and culture and history, but also drawing inspiration from the moral basis of your relationship, that things can work differently. And when a man realizes very clearly that he took his wife for granted, or that the wife realizes she took certain things for granted, it is possible for people to go back, renew their commitment, and have a much stronger relationship. Similarly, flawed elections are not necessarily evidence that democracy is not working. Very often it is the over-enthusiasm, but also agents of state, electoral bodies, the police, and so on, that often confuse the president with the state. Very often in our countries, the military, the security agencies believe that they confuse the state with the president. And they think that their obligation and responsibility is not to the people of Nigeria or Ghana or Kenya, but it is protecting the regime that is in power. Rather than dying, democracy can lose its appeal and allure for very many reasons. But often the letter and the spirit of the Constitution are miles apart. Therefore, we must continue to make the point, that citizens' engagement with the institutions and instruments of state is fundamental to how democracy grows in our countries. Rather than believing that democracy is a game of experts and all we have to do is literally choose which club we are going to support. Being involved in democracy in your country is not the same as supporting Arsenal or supporting Liverpool or Manchester United. There are many of us who support any club that is holding a trophy. But it's much more than that. And the call is much deeper than that. And the sacrifice is much deeper than that. Because conceptually, we confuse office with power. Okay? There are people who are in office, but they are not in power. There are people who are in power, but they are not in office. And you can often see a lot of that from the fact that if you ask Nigerians, maybe who was your governor 20 years ago, average citizen will scratch because they can't remember. So it's about impact, but it's also about understanding that we are not just agents to be acted upon. Politicians must demonstrate the spirit of patriotism. A deliberate effort must be made by politicians to understand that their lives must reflect both the letter and the spirit of the claims of the Constitution. In this way, politics will not become a do or die affair, a ticket to the theater of corruption. Institutions like the judiciary, electoral bodies must inspire confidence among our people. I now want to try and end. The debate about democracy remains controversial, but it's also enchanting. It will continue to remain a subject of intense interest. Democracy is about systems, and systems will always remain in a state of flux because the goalposts of human expectation are constantly shifting. An American professor of political science called Kostika Bradatan published a very beautiful article. You can find it on the internet. But he titles the article, "Democracy is for the Gods." Because he's saying that the claims that democracy makes, humanly speaking, are literally unrealizable. But it's not an act of frustration. And there's a little book I just started reading last week. The title is The Shortest History of Democracy. And in it, John Keane, the author, says, and I quote, "Democracy remains the most potent weapon yet invented by humans for preventing malicious abuse of power. A system that aspires the dreams of how to prevent the few and the rich and the powerful who act as if they are mighty immortals that are born to rule." End of quote. John Keane further argues that actually, contrary to what we claim, democracy did not start in Athens. Because he makes the point, hundreds of years before the Athenians began using assemblies, the Syrians, the Phoenicians, the Indians were also gathering, but their system was not as framed as what happened but basically the same with what happened in Athens. Now, of course, Amartya Sen wrote a very beautiful book. The title of the book is The Argumentative Indian. And he makes the point, it's a direct frontal assault at the claims of Western civilization. And Amartya Sen said, look, we as Indians, we are always arguing for 10, 20 hours so don't give us the impression that we're supposed to learn any of these things from. So it speaks to the need for us in our democracy to also deal with practical issues of what are the cultural surroundings around which we make our claims. I wish to conclude by arguing that contrary to the notion of democracy dying, we should focus on addressing the usage of the various models for the achievement of the goals of human development. Democracy is a subject, and it is subject to toxicity, it is subject to decay, to rot, to fracture, but not to death. Democracy will never die. There will be bad elections. But the only cure to a bad election is another election. Often, those who pose the greatest threat to democracy are the elected officials who often, as one of our Nigerian politicians, a friend of mine who died just about last month, Mr. Audu Ogbe, who once said that, he said to me, he said, Nigerian politicians believe that people vote for us to enjoy on their behalf. So the assumption that politicians have that the rest of us who voted for you are so stupid, and that all we are supposed to do is to stand and look at you in your beautiful cars, your beautiful houses, and we are all just spectators. All we can choose is which team are we going to clap for. Participatory democracy means participating in election, but also participating in reaping, the outcome. So I therefore want to end by saying, first of all, it's a great honor, President Jonathan, for me to be here. When you took that decision on March 31st, 2015, he's written a little book, which you should read, My Transition Hours. But when you took that decision, it was one of those moments that it was between yourself, your conscience, your God, against the run of play. On the 31st of March 2015, even before the elections had concluded, when you made that call, you were answering what to me was more or less a divine call. And by taking that decision, not only did you reverse, and I think your successor made the point himself over and over, you had all the military, you had all the paraphernalia of power around you. It would have been possible to instigate a war. But by taking that decision, in my view, the people of Athens entrusted into your hands a torch of hope, a touch of what democracy should look like. The honor, the dignity, the sense of sacrifice. That is what democracy is all about. You illustrated that. And it's the reason why when you call, I will come. When you knock, I will open the door. Because right now, I had to excuse myself from a meeting of the Catholic Bishops' Conference of Nigeria, which is still on. Our meeting is finishing actually on Sunday. But I had to excuse myself to be here because I thought it was a great honor for me, to be with you. But please, General Theophilus Danjuma, one of our greatest statesmen, President Obasanjo's colleague, once said, very often, the voice of the devil is not so far from the voice of God. Listen very carefully to those who want to use you as an instrument for the elongation of their interests, and not your interests or the interests of Nigeria. Think very clearly, pray very clearly. Final decision, it's your call. Finally, some years back, John Major, the former British Prime Minister, addressed top-level politicians in the UK. And he started his speech by posing a question. He said, if after 850 years of our democracy in the United Kingdom, if there is one person in this room that believes that we have gotten it right, please raise your hand. After 850 years, if there's anybody who believes that we in the United Kingdom have succeeded in our democracy, please raise your hands. Of course, no hand went up. Therefore, and I want to end by saying something about what is now catching flame, the hopes, the expectation, the hysteria around our young generation called Gen Z. Being young is a transition, but transition to adulthood and responsibility. Very often, many young people in Africa don't have the experience that people of our generation had. Many of us have the past that we grew up with, because many young people today are born in Accra, born in Nigeria, but brought up in the United Kingdom or other places, and the children of the elite. Therefore, their expectations are pretty high, and they also, this is a culture of fast food. Democracy cannot be served as a fast food menu. Taking responsibility to govern is not the same as wanting or aspiring to participate in the middle of corruption. Because very often many young people in Africa, many groups that feel disadvantaged, rather than focusing on the real things, what do we need to do? What kind of discipline do we need to put in place? Because if you want to be president tomorrow, governor next tomorrow, we should see the signs today. There is a saying among the beggars in northern Nigeria, who are the Muslim beggars, that if Friday is going to be good, that is based on the gifts I will be given, I will see it on Wednesday. So if you want to be president of Nigeria or Ghana or your country, begin to study the mistakes that those who came from behind have made. Begin to understand the history, how this struggle has come through. It is no use to pretend that simply just knowing how to kick a football means that you can play like Messi. It's not going to be so. I remember I used to watch Ronaldinho when he was a young man. But Ronaldinho said sometime when he was being interviewed, he said, look, my brother and I, we used to spend 8 hours just practicing. So when you see Ronaldinho do the things he does with the ball, it's not because the ball is in his feet. So I make the point. Tolstoy once said, all unhappy families are unhappy differently. The reason why democracies have failed somewhere may not be the same with the reasons why democracies have failed in our own situation. But democracy has survived through tough times and has suffered affliction. Democracy has survived cancers. It has survived demagogues, mobsters, empires, emperors, narcissism, appetite, and other forms of evil. But as long as there are brave men and women like Nelson Mandela, Martin Luther King, Steve Biko, Václav Havel, Aung San Suu Kyi, the young Chinese boy whom we saw in 1990 when at Tiananmen Square, many of you can Google and see him. A tank was coming before him and he had only a cellophane bag. The tank was going this way, he was going to say, come and crush me. As long as the human imagination that has inspired people like Steve Biko, Mahatma Gandhi, Rosa Parks, Thurgood Marshall, Malala, thousands of other young people across the world, as long as that spirit is still in us, democracy will not die. The winds may blow, its flames will never go out, and all of us, you and I, are custodians of that flame. Thank you very much, and may God bless you.